People are coming in, make sure that you've signed in for sure, or if you haven't signed in, make sure you sign in when you're leaving. But super excited to have all of you. I have hung out with almost all of you at this point, which is awesome. And this is gonna be super informal. You guys have spent time with me, you know I'm not a very formal person in general, but I just wanna use this time to have a really good collaborative conversation, and then take all of that input as part of my recommendations as well, if that's fair for you. There's a good group of y'all here, but I still do want to just kind of go around and do very, very brief introductions. Before we do that, just small housekeeping items. As you guys know, I'm Kristie Tobias, the lead for the governance operations transition team. That's a lot to say. And one of the things that I am focused on with that is looking from the inside out at the ways that we can improve, engage, and ensure that we are focused on sustaining the people in the community, sustaining our leaders in the community, providing the best that we can to drive success. As part of that, that's why I'm holding this public input session. So as we go through our agenda, the very last item will of course be to allow for public input, so we'll make sure that we allow for that. And then as there are questions or anything as a follow-up, please feel free to reach out to me. Barbara Scott is phenomenal, and I'm grateful for her so much for being here. So we'll have minutes and all of that as well. In your agenda, there are agendas at the front if you didn't print one out, but in the agenda at the very end where it has public input, it also has the Transition Pensacola website. So we are streaming from the Transition Pensacola website so that you guys know that. But again, for anyone that's here that's either as a leader or just someone that just wants to join, make sure you go to that website for all of the information. Anything else housekeeping wise that I need to mention? Perfect. So I would love just to go around the room. If you guys just don't mind saying your name, department you're representing, you're welcome to share a fun fact like I love long walks on the beach or whatever you want. But just so we all kind of get face to name, I know you guys all know each other, but it's just great to do that again. Brian.
Hey, good morning, Brian Cooper, Director of Parks and Recreation. I love long walks on the beach.
Perfect. Perfect.
Don Suarez of Pensacola Energy. Brian loves long.
Awesome.
Edward Sisson, Chief Human Resources Officer.
Long walks on the beach for you as well?
For him.
With Brian.
Chuck Mallett, Captain Pensacola Police Department, Florida State, and Boston Red Sox.
I like the Red Sox. Florida State, we're gonna have words.
Jenny Craner, Pensacola Fire Department, and Boston Red Sox as well.
Did I tell y'all my brother plays for the Red Sox? Yeah, I was like, I thought I told y'all that. Good job. Perfect. And then let's go back to Cheryl.
Yes, Cheryl Fox, Athletic Superintendent, Parks and Recreation. Good morning.
Good morning. Glad to see you, madam.
Glad to see you.
She threatened to not show up.
Bill Campbell, Park Superintendent, Parks and Recreation Department. Dave Robow, National Energy, go Yankees.
I would like to ask you to leave now, sir.
Doug Resmondo, Sanitation and Fleet Management, like long walks on shore piers.
We'll have a one-on-one conversation about that.
Marcy Whitaker, Housing Administrator, and I like my cats.
Oh, I love that. And I'm going to hold real quick. So for those of you just coming in, if you would like to, you can join and come closer if you want. Totally your call. We're just pulling chairs up, making it an interactive session.
There's a seat right there.
There's several, like I'm just hanging out by myself over here. All right. If you want to go next.
Derek Owens, Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Tracy Walsh, Human Resources Manager, go Knowles.
Rude.
Amy Workman, Recruiting and Training Manager.
Emily LaShawn, HR or Human Resources Recruiting and Training Coordinator, and Go Gators.
Yes, ma'am. My favorite person today. Thank you.
Barbara Scott Payne, I'm part of Quint Studer's staff, and I am an Alabama fan. I know.
We'll allow
there
it.
we go.
We'll allow it. So let's go to the back. Perfect. And then we'll keep going back.
Erica Burnett, City Clerk, Roll Tide.
Oh, girl. Vernon, do you want to go?
Vernon Stewart, Public Information, Go Gators.
Excellent. Love it. There you go. Hi.
I'm Valerie Cruz. You know what I do?
Yes.
I'm CNA home care worker agency. My
my favorite football team.
If you want, yeah.
Well, I like Dallas Cowboys and Florida State.
Oh, boy. It's just getting rough today. Awesome. All right, so let's come back up. Yes.
Dean of Pensacola, Pensacola Energy. I love the Saints.
We'll allow that. We'll allow it. All right, let's keep going.
Don Carrera, Office of the City Council, and I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the St. Louis Cardinals.
Wow, nice.
Steve Richards, Code Enforcement Administrator.
And I'm Rebecca Ferguson, Economic Policy Coordinator, so my focus is economic development. My father-in-law played for Florida, and my favorite team is the Saints.
Nice. Very nice.
George Mayberger, Purchasing Manager. Go Starbucks.
We'll allow that one.
Dennis Fleming, Sanitation Department, and I just like to go fishing.
There you go. We'll allow that too.
Sherry Morris, Planning Services Administrator, Pensacola native, dog mom, and I will end on Go Knowles for you.
Rude. Is there anyone else that hasn't had a chance to introduce themselves? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Diane Dubison, trike rider, and Go LSU.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you guys again for coming. We are going to go ahead and get started. As I said, this is going to be a good collaborative conversation, so please, please, please provide your input. My goal is to facilitate. I want you guys to be doing the majority of the talking. And so as we go through things, if you have questions or you're like, maybe we can kind of adjust the way that we're talking about things, feel free to tell me that. But let's first start. So one of the things that I know that I've had a chance to talk with most, if not all of you about in some of our meetings is just the concept of goals and mission and value-based conversations. Thank you, Erica, for sitting up here with me. Yes, not by myself anymore. And so if you have your agendas, and even if you don't, I'll walk you through it. One of the things that we're going to be focusing on for the next about 35 minutes or so is mission-aligned goals and accountability. And so before I kind of open it up for conversation, I want to talk with you a little bit about what that means to me and a little bit about my background. So as you guys, most of you should know, I am a consultant by nature, and so I consult healthcare organizations. And one of the first things that I always identify within any organization that I consult is, what is your mission? What does that look like? What drives you? Because if you don't know what your mission is, then what are you doing? And so as a city, we have a mission that we're committed to, but as each department or enterprise works, we have missions that we should be committed to at that level as well. And so in some of our conversations, one of the great things that I've absolutely loved talking about with all of you is your passion. You all are incredibly passionate about the work that you're doing for the city, which is phenomenal, and I absolutely love that. And so my goal with this conversation is for us to look across the room at how that passion aligns into goal-based focus. And so when we look at what the mission, vision, and values are of the city, I would love just to kind of get y'all's feedback on what you feel like are the mission for you, like what drives you, like what mission drives you, what values do you align with the work that you do, and just kind of want to get a conversation going on that, just so as you're talking amongst each other, starting to align what our priorities are, if that makes sense. So question one for y'all, and would love just to get your feedback and input, is what is the mission or what are the values that drive you in your everyday work, in what you bring to the city and then what you bring to your employees? So what does that look like? Don't everyone talk at once. Yes, sir.
We created a mission statement probably 20 years or so ago for Pensacola Energy, and it's something like Pensacola Energy is a high-value energy services provider that focuses on safety, excellence, and performance. And so that's the basis of everything we do, in support of the city, of course, of the goals of the mayor, as they may change from year to year or mayor to mayor. And then we also have a core value of continuous improvement.
Perfect. So what I heard from you is a priority focused on safety and then continuous improvement. Is that a fair statement? How many others of you have safety and continuous improvement as a priority for you? going to say, I'm looking over at Jenny. I was like, you should have that, and Captain Mallet. And so as you think about that, one of the things that we'll start to talk about as well is how we align what safety looks like for us as a city, because safety looks different, right, for each department. Safety for Pensacola Energy is going to look different as safety for the fire department and safety for the police department. Like, it's going to look different, and it should. But there are certain things that we can align and collaborate on to make sure that when we are looking at the thought process of what does safety mean for us, that we're all focusing on how all of that aligns to the goals of the city. So there are key things that I always look at. We call them pillars of excellence, basically, within my realm of work, but they're focus areas. So for every goal that you ever set, there should always be a pillar aligned with it. So safety is a pillar that I would say should always be aligned. We've got pillars of excellence like safety, growth, finance. Those are kind of pillars of excellence. And as we continue along our journey, though I know for our transition team, we'll provide recommendations over the next 30 days. And I've talked with several of you about this. Outside of that, as a member of the city, my goal is to continue to spend time and work with you guys on things that we know we can do to drive success for the city. So I love that you say safety. Sorry, I digressed for a little bit. So what are some other ways? What are some other things that are driving you as far as your mission and your values? And thank you so much for being the first one to provide feedback.
We have changing needs with our city as it's growing, so we have to provide that excellent service to an ever-changing and growing population and a diverse population.
Perfect. How difficult is that?
It's difficult.
What do you find, like when you're thinking about, and not to put you on the spot, Jenny, but when you're thinking about how to engage your team in those conversations and those changing needs, what's the best way that you're able to do that?
Following the best practices, just national standards for best practice, but really focusing on being service-minded. Just with our values, dedication, professionalism, honor, and compassion, and focusing really on the dedication and the compassion component, and then translating that into the national best practices for how we operate safely.
Perfect. So I love that you mentioned national best practices. How many of you guys right now within your areas have national best practices, industry standards, or even just benchmarks that you focus on? Perfect. So across the board, that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we look at is what are the benchmarks for success and who are we measuring ourselves against. So it's really easy to measure ourselves against ourselves. It's interesting because at one of the facilities that I'm working at now, we have a department who has been excellent, quote unquote, for a very, very long time. And that measure of excellence has literally just been them. So they've been in the 99th percentile with just themselves, which is great, but what does that mean when we look at national standards? And so when we start to do that comparison, we're identifying, while you may have been great for yourself, are you great and are you driving to that next level by providing some comparisons outside of just what you're seeing every day? That's kind of like my challenge as we start to really focus on driving the city. And again, like I've mentioned before, the work that you guys do, and I've spent one-on-one time with all of you, the work y'all are doing is phenomenal. I'm amazed and impressed at the things that are going on. As someone who's only been here for 5 years, it blows my mind. But I know that we can do so much more and we can strive for so much more. So using those national standards as benchmarks is going to be really that key. And so as we look at one of the things that I had mentioned in the agenda is like goals and accountability. So I want us to really think about like, what do goals look like for our department? And then how are we measuring those goals against other like-minded areas like outside of here? Does that make sense in thinking about? So that's kind of where I really want us to kind of start to focus and drive, and that's one of the recommendations that I am going to make is as we look at goals, starting to look at them at a higher level. So I say all of that because I definitely want to continue to get some input from you guys on the mission and values that are driving you. So thank you, Jenny, for that feedback. I appreciate it. Others, what are some other mission-focused areas or values that are driving you in your work? Yes, ma'am.
So nothing is better than your first day at work. I mean, there's, no better feeling than the first day coming in, new excitement, all of those kinds of things. So that's kind of what drives, I think, economic development is that, a major goal, of course, is for is for us to help Pensacola remain competitive in a global marketplace, and whether that means connecting to services and quality of life and all the pieces, that the city provides, bringing that all together again to help Pensacola remain competitive now and into the future, I think is an important goal. That's the big picture kind of goal for us.
Perfect. I love the focus on the future too, because we've got a lot of future ahead of us, right? So it's interesting to see there's lots of places where you'll see like short-term goals, like, well, we want to get this done, we want to get this done, we want to get this done, like really quick wins. It's like, great, but what does that mean for the future? So I love that you say that, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Others, what else is driving you? Yes, sir.
Not to sound cliche, but just direct quality customer service, because we have, being in charge of most of the infrastructure in the city, it's a direct interaction with the public. We have to sell that service every day. Being competitive with outside communities and knowing what outside communities are doing with the roadways, with the sidewalks, with the stormwater, it's important. As a metric we use. And we use analytics a lot. We have, 311 at any given time. We know how many potholes there are in the city. We know how many sidewalks need to be repaired, on and on. We can compare that information with other municipalities. And like, I looked the other day, we had 2 Mondays ago, we had 3 potholes and 311 in the whole city. Well, Detroit had 187,000.
Wow.
So not that's a comparison metric.
Right.
We use the information that we have at our, as a resource to measure ourselves.
Excellent. And I love that you are using analytics, because it's one thing to say, well, we've got this going on, but it's a whole other thing to compare and to be able to use metrics for that. The comparison to Detroit is very interesting, for sure.
They're all bankrupt, but
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Thank you so much, Derek. I appreciate that. Who
I
else?
think
Yes,
two
sir.
things we're dealing with at the police department, besides supporting the general mission of the city and supporting that, is we're trying to create a culture in the police department of actually going back to the beginning of police work. Sir Robert Peel, who is like the father of law enforcement, always said that the community is the police and the police are the community. And I think over the years that was lost, where it became 2 separate entities. So we work really hard, especially with our younger officers, day one, to make them understand that that's our belief. That is one big team that's fighting crime in our area, making our area safe. And then secondly, we become very intentional about developing leadership. We're finding training classes specific to leadership training, and we're bringing up our next generation of leaders. And then we task each level of supervision with identifying those officers that are going to be the future department, and being very intentional about developing their skills so that they'll be great leaders in the future.
I love that. So as you guys know, we've got the 2 leadership sessions, so today and then next Friday, and then we've got the employee sessions. And I love your focus on developing future leaders. And so if you have not already thought about this as far as people that you are inviting to the employee sessions, those are the people you want to invite to the employee sessions. Those people who you see as future leaders, those people who are like, you know what, I know you've been working really hard, I appreciate your input, I would love for you to come and represent our department. So I absolutely love that you say that. And that's one of the things, and Amy and I had a brief conversation on this, and we'll talk a little further about it, but training and development, it's phenomenal, and we've got some great resources in HR. A little biased because I have an HR background, but we do have some phenomenal resources, and continuing to find those areas to build people up and keep them in the community is going to be key, but that is also where that leadership comes in as well, right? So thank you so much, Captain Mallory, I appreciate that. Other feedback?
I'll go.
Yes, ma'am.
Planning, I think ours is a little different in that we have to balance kind of the big picture versus kind of the individual. We deal with the public in a different way, where individuals are coming in and applying for land use approvals that affect their individual property rights, and we have to balance that against, they're allowed to do these things by state statute, by city code, but it's not a by right thing. They have to go through a public process, and sometimes it's contentious, sometimes it's not, but it's difficult to make everyone happy in those situations. So there's not really a metric that determines whether or not that was successful, depending on the outcome. So we try to look at the bigger picture with ours, the city's comprehensive plan, Although I know a lot of these people are tired of hearing me bother them about it. It affects a lot of the departments who provide services and are involved in development. And the last time we had to do our state mandated update, it was still DCA at the state level. Now it's DEO. But they used our comp plan as a model, said it was a progressive document, and they used it as a model for other communities. So that was something that, we looked at as a measure of success, as a big picture item. We had Palafox named as a great street in America by the American Planning Association, also a big picture success signal to us that we can use as a measure of how things are going in Pensacola. But overall, we kind of walk a tightrope sometimes as far as the type of service we provide. We have a big picture function, and then the day-to-day can be a little difficult, but.
That's excellent. And, one of the things that is always interesting, especially as leaders, it's hard to highlight the things that we're doing well, right? Like, we're really good at finding the opportunities for improvement. I know in healthcare especially, we're great at that. Like, that's literally what we do all day long. But highlighting the things that we're doing well, highlighting when we're identifying and actually executing on leading practices is huge. And so as we continue these conversations, it's looking at those things as well, like, while we're looking at the goals that we're setting, where are the goals that we're actually already accomplishing, and how are we communicating that? So one of the things that that I've talked with some of you about, and we'll talk about now, is the art and the concept of reward and recognition, which is really highlighting when we're doing awesome things, and being able to share that with our team and cascading that to our teams. That also leads to great engagement with our employees, but as a leader, that's a huge thing of role modeling what success looks like and role modeling what we want to achieve. And so as you're thinking about the goals that you have and thinking about how that's driving our mission and values, also think about the things that are connected to our goals that are driving us to that next level and making us so successful as well. Thank you so much, Sherry. Appreciate it. All right, who else?
Kristie, I think
Yes, sir.
that in talking about what we have now, and so it's great to talk about where we want to go, but talk about what we have now. By and large, we had 3, and I wasn't trying to play on my phone when I was trying to find this. And in our budget document, so each year when the budget's published, we have the strategic goals that are published as part of the budget. So right now, the ones that we have standing are that the city be safe, attractive, and well-managed. Excuse me. All of the departments should have metrics or goals or measurements that have been set as part of the budget that we measure ourselves on to do that. Now, as you mentioned as well, we're comparing ourselves to ourselves, like what happened last year, and do you want to tweak it from that? But they all should kind of be catered towards that. And so that's kind of where we're at. That's where it's recorded, but it changes year to year. It can change. It's not a consistent kind of ongoing theme. And I don't know that necessarily everybody has had a chance to have input on how those are developed. So again, these are the mayor's strategic alignment, strategic direction. We've talked a little bit about the performance management system that we've implemented, and we're actually in our 3rd year of utilizing that system. And part of the way that is set up from a goal perspective is there's citywide competencies that are established by the city administrator or the mayor or whoever the authority is that weighs in on those that apply to everybody in the city. And each department director has competencies that they measure their department on, because it may be different from public safety, may be looking at different things as opposed to someone else as far as what's important to them and how are they going to go. But then each individual employee should have performance objectives that are catered on helping them achieve those goals. And I go into all that to say that ideally all of those should point back to the city being safe, the city being attractive, or the city being, and so that's kind of our structure now. As far as from human resources and some of the things that we've got to do, there's all kinds of things that we need to do. We're involved in everything, and I think it's our we're inputs and outputs as far as our people go. That's our biggest resource that we have. It's our position that we have to have sound policies for managers to enable them to manage as effective and efficiently as they can, but also build in protections for our employees so that they are treated fairly and equitably. We have or should have a sound compensation strategy, and so there's all kinds of different goals and directives that we try to do among our team. But I just wanted to put out on the table as we're discussing, this is kind of, at least to my understanding, this is our structure, and this is kind of how we have now.
Thank you. Appreciate And that's one of the great things too, is that in talking with everyone, like everyone has mentioned their goals and things like that. I think one of the cool things though is you'd mentioned it when you were spot on, is the input, like which is what input have you had on what goals are actually driving your success and what does that look like? And I think those are, I know, that's one of the key things in general. Like as a leader, if you don't have input on what your goals are and how you can drive them, and then how you're cascading that to your employees, then it's kind of like, well, I have my goals, but they're not goals that I set for myself. And so using that, what we have, and we've got great resources, and thank you so much for sharing those, and I know you and I have had those conversations throughout. We have amazing resources around us, and now it's just taking them to the next level and making them personal for us and customizing that so that it makes sense for me as a leader, so it makes sense for Ginny, so it makes sense for Rebecca, so that we understand what that looks like. And then we can cascade that to our employees because it's mine. Like, I'm owning it. I believe in this goal, and this is the goal that I want you to have as well as an employee. One of the cool things that I will say that I have seen be very successful, and I've mentioned this, but I want to kind of dive a little deeper, is when you take goals from this like big level, from the city level, and you make them very specific to what you're doing. So, Jenny and I had this conversation with your team, but you take that goal, you make it specific to me, so I make it specific to the fire department as an example, and then from there, I cascade it to my chiefs. And then from there, I cascade it to the rest of my team, because they are then going to take that goal and understand where it came from, what it means, and how it relates to the work that I'm doing. And then you connect it all the way back to, okay, so how am I performing? Kind of like what you've already mentioned, which is that goal connection to performance management, but taking it to that deeper level of, it's not just a goal connection, it's my goal. And this is what I'm setting for myself. And, to even give it a better example, has anyone ever set a weight loss goal in their life? Anyone? No one? Just me? So, if you've ever set a weight loss goal, setting like an arbitrary, I'm gonna lose 40 pounds by next week goal, is not so impactful. Setting an actual specific, well, I'm gonna make sure that I start to eat, more vegetables today, and then I'm gonna work out once a week. And then next week, I'm gonna work out twice, and using that to help set very specific goals that are actually connecting me to that long-term perspective, but that makes sense to me, means so much more. And it will engage people in the community. And I know a lot of you have mentioned within your departments, engaging that younger generation of people. So my sister very kindly told me, you're an old millennial. And I was like, thank you, sister, appreciate that. Don't know what that means, but but as she was talking to me about it, she's 9 years younger than I am. And so she's technically like Gen Z or whatever we want to call the next generation. But we always have, in every field of work, there's always a younger generation, right? And so as we look at that, one of the things that's always stayed true is that every single generation wants to feel engaged and connected to the work that they're doing, right? It may change as far as, people moving a lot or feeling a little more transient, but they want to feel engaged and connected, and that's okay. But in order to do that, that's where these conversations come in. Well, what's my mission? What am I driving? What are my goals that mean something to me? And how am I then using that to help drive my team? And so I am grateful and appreciate exactly what you said, Edward, and I appreciate that so much, because that's where we want to make sure where the rubber meets the road. So we're connecting the dots. All right, awesome. Yes, ma'am.
So I came from an organization with the 5 pillars, right? So we used to always say that without the pillars, that's your foundation. And if you don't have the foundation, then everything you build on top of it is shaky. So as we go around the room, and I know that we discussed this when you met with our team, but everyone has these individual goals and mini mission statements. And my goal would be that everyone should have their own, but that we have we have the pillars for all of us. So people, service, quality, finance, and safety, right? That if that's whatever we choose to go with, everything that we do by department filters into it. For us in recruiting and training, and I think in HR, people and service are probably our main pillars. And we could provide bad customer service, because if you want to apply for a job with the city, you're stuck with us, right? We don't have competition.
Right.
So you have to be driven by something else to provide that service. So
Excellent.
an alignment would be great.
I love it. It's the alignment. It's exactly what you said. And so for those of you that may not be familiar with the pillars of excellence that we had mentioned before, I feel like some of you probably are, but just like what Amy said, it's there's pillars that just drive your success and alignment, which is exactly what Amy's talking about. And with that, I'd mentioned earlier, safety is one of those things. So when you look at the pillar of safety, you look at goals that are aligned under that pillar of safety, because safety looks different for the fire department than it looks for police department, than it looks for public works. And so it should look different, but it's then aligning to the overall city goal, which was, or is, to ensure that we have a safe environment, to keeping our city safe. And so I love that you mentioned that, because that's it exactly, is that alignment, and making sure that we're all aligned on what our focus areas are. Thank you, Amy. Other feedback that you guys want to provide on mission-based goals and values that are driving you? There's a lot of you here, so I'm sure you all have feedback.
I'll go.
Yes, ma'am.
Vernon stepped out. I'll talk at the mic because I know how live streams work. Hi, I'm Allie Norton. I'm the Assistant Public Information Officer, and the people who bug all of you with my mass emails. And our goal is to highlight the wonderful things that all of these directors and managers are doing. But it's also to hold ourselves accountable. I run the social media, and so I get to see some of the worst comments and some of the best comments, and it's our job to take those comments and turn it into action.
Thank you, Allie. I
Yes.
appreciate that. And you're so right, too, like with the work that you guys are doing, it is highlighting those amazing things, but accountability is huge. So, random question, but it's directly connected. How many of you have ever played a sport or done anything that requires competition? Like at some point in time, you've done something competitive, and if you have not, then. And so with that, who held you accountable for doing your best? Your team, yourself. It is yourself, right? So you've got your team, but you've got yourself too. You were responsible for doing your best. You could have your team, you could have other people like guiding you. My brother plays for the Red Sox, and he spent the past couple months relaxing, gaining weight, as he says. His winter coat is what he likes to call it. So he puts on a little cushion, but he started back training yesterday. And so my dad is his trainer when he's in town, because my dad has played every sport imaginable. But with that training, my brother is the one that wakes up at 4 a.m. to get up, have his protein shake, whatever energy drink he's going to have, and run a few miles, and then get to the gym. And he's the one that's responsible for that. And he's the one that owns that. And he even said to me, he was like, I may retire this year, because, you retire at 26 from baseball, apparently. Good for him. But he's like, I may retire this year, but I'm not going to retire without owning my journey. And that's the thing. Like, we're responsible for that. We hold ourselves accountable. And so that's where I am beyond excited to continue our journey, to partner together to look at what that accountability should look like. What do our focused goals, my personal accountability, what I'm holding myself responsible for, and then what I am role modeling to my team, what does that look like? So thank you so much, Allie, for saying that, because that's absolutely right. It's that accountability. Others, what's some other feedback that you want to provide on your mission and value-based goals? Yes, ma'am.
Department predominantly is funded with grant dollars. So we do an accountability every year, monitoring, reporting to the federal government on all our grant dollars and how we're performing, and then that is measured against national measurements. And if we don't meet those goals, then we no longer receive that money. So it's a pretty big motivator to make sure that we're meeting those goals. And then, like you say, cascade that information down through the organization. So.
Excellent. For those of you that didn't hear that, Marcy was saying that they have grant dollars, and basically if you don't use the grant dollars, you don't have the grant dollars anymore, which is a huge accountability system right there. So that's perfect, and thank you so much for sharing that. Awesome. Thank you, Marcy. Others? Who else wants to provide input? And as you're thinking about it, so I'll even take it to another level, which I would love to get. And if you've already spoken before, you can speak again on this as well. But one of the things that we talked about was, of course, the mission and values that are driving you and your focus and using that for your goals. But I'd also love to hear some of the goals that you have for yourself throughout 2019 and for your team, what those goals look like. One of the things that I think would be phenomenal is, though I know that there are goals that we see, there are also goals internally that other people don't know about. And so there's a really cool opportunity for us to look at ways to share that and collaborate on that, and to partner on that as well. So there may be some goals that you have and some action plans that you have that someone else can actually help you with, and you don't identify it until you're like in the weeds and you're like, oh, I need to reach out to this person. But if we have them proactively transparent and we're already having those conversations, then you don't have to wait until the last minute to try and reach out. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, we have this meeting set up next month because we know that we're working on the same goal and the same action step together, which again drives us to that next level of success. So I'd love to know, along with the mission and values that are driving your goals, would also love to know what are some goals that you guys have for 2019, and some ways that you may see people in this room that can help you collaborate on that and drive your goals to success. So mission value-based goals, and then what your actual goals look like. Feedback.
Some of our individual goals when we're creating a training, we're measured on how quickly we fill external and internal job opportunities. And so we rely on all of the hiring managers to help us with that process, because we can post for 2 weeks, we can get you the candidates. Some hiring managers like to mull over the candidates a little bit longer. Some are in a hurry and they want it done yesterday. But we're measured on how quickly we can process those internal and external. And we're also measured against how many of our jobs opportunities are filled by internal promotion. Because obviously our goal is to grow our own people, because hopefully our own people have the best experience as well. So we're measured against that as well. But it definitely relies on hiring managers in the other departments, because both sides can only do so much without one another.
Absolutely. And that's excellent. It's a perfect example of everyone is involved in that goal,
I'm
right?
sure people don't know that's what we're measured against.
Yep.
They don't know, and so we don't want to be like, hey, could you hurry up? We don't want to rush the process. We're all sitting like, can you hurry up? And so, but then we can always say, well, it wasn't our fault.
Perfect. No, that's awesome. How many of you have ever had to hire in your departments? Anyone? Awesome. So then you're probably quite familiar with HR. But that's such a huge goal. And, with my background in HR, I remember I always love to tell interesting stories, the lab. So back in my healthcare career, the lab was one of the hardest places to hire, because there's certain certifications that you have to have. And where I was in North Carolina, it was a small community, and there just weren't a lot of people that had those certifications. And I remember my lab manager came down to me, because I was her HR manager, and she's like, why aren't we getting people in here? And I was like, well, every time I send you a position, you take like 30 days to mull over it, and then by then the person is gone. And she's like, wait, you can track that? I was like, yes. I'm tracking that. And she's like, oh, but she had no idea that that was something that I was tracking, and that was a goal of mine. And that communication and collaboration helped improve the amount of people we were able to hire for her, but it just wasn't part of her purview. She wasn't thinking about that. But that's where that conversation comes into play. Like you said, most people may not know that that's something that you're tracking and a goal that you have, but as we have those conversations and start to make that more transparent, it's like, oh, now I get it. Now it makes sense.
It'd be interesting to see the numbers, and I don't think we track it in one big system, but turnover rates, retention rates, and I know that Tracy works with a lot of those numbers, but then looking at that, how that can tie into leadership development or targeted hiring or interviewing skills, because those can usually tell you a lot. I don't think as a city as a whole, we look at those numbers in depth.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Others, what are some goals that you have?
Talk about personal goals. So I've been in the police department only 29 years. I'm looking at about 6 more years before I can retire.
Not allowed.
And,
You're not allowed to retire. Sorry.
And so, talking earlier about the department goal of developing leadership, I kind of take that as a personal goal. I'm making sure that I am developing the skills, both as police officers, police skills and leadership skills, and those in my command, to make sure that they can take my place. When I leave, I want to feel comfortable that I've left the police department in good condition.
Excellent. I love that you say that. How many of you have succession planning as part of your personal goal? So talking with all of y'all, there's easily hundreds of years of experience in this room. And it's one of those things, I love that you say that, because we forget about succession planning until we're like 30 days from leaving. At the facility I'm working at, we have a leader who now has officially left. But when I first met him, he said, I have 71 days. And I was like, you have 71 days till what? And he's like, till I retire. I was like, how long have you been counting this? And he's like, since day 365. But it was his plan. And I was like, okay, but who's taking your place? And he's like, oh, I've already been grooming them on day 364. And so those are those things where you look at leadership development, skill development. It's beyond just, well, I want to give people an opportunity. It's that exactly. We have a community of people that we want to keep here. The best way to keep them is start to groom them at the very beginning. One of the things that we always say in healthcare, but it's true for any type of customer service industry, is the retention of your customers starts on the first day that you meet them. The retention of your employees starts on the first day you meet them. That development starts on the first day you meet them. And so one of the things, and Amy and I will work on this together, to look at is also, what does leadership development look like? What are some of the skills and training that we are providing for our leaders? We have so many great resources, so many great training opportunities, but taking it to that next level and tapping people too. One of the best ways to engage people is starting at the very beginning and saying, hey, I see you as a leader. Would you be interested in some of the skills or some of the courses that we have available for you at the city, something that will keep you here? And for those of you that may have been part of the transition team meeting yesterday, you may have heard that Quint Studer had mentioned keeping me here, which I love Quint so much. He takes, as he should, he takes credit for a lot of the things that I've been able to do, because when I first came to Pensacola, I came from North Carolina, and my big thing was being involved. Like, if I'm going to live in a city, I want to be involved in that city. Be careful what you wish for, because then, this happened, and so I'm here. But, which is awesome, though, because you have people that are investing in you, like Captain Mallet is investing in his team. Like, I know Jenny Craner is investing in a team. Like, I know, like, all of you are investing in your team, and that is something you take personally and something that your team appreciates. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Other goals. As you guys can tell, I'm very passionate about these conversations, so I like to jump in a little bit. Other goals. We have about, let me look at our time, 3 minutes until we open it up for public input, but definitely want to make sure if there's other feedback you wanted to provide that we have that in there. Is anyone else? Yes, ma'am?
One thing I'd like to focus on internally as far as employees go is communication. You hear just people saying, well, I didn't know anything about that. I heard about that at orientation, but I don't know anything about it now. So we've developed a newsletter that goes out monthly that just has nothing but HR information. This is coming up, this is coming up. I'm trying to focus on more ways and avenues to be able to get that communication out besides just a newsletter. We have a lot of employees who do not have access to email. So just trying to find other methods to be able to get that word out to the employees if there's something coming up and vital information that they may need to know.
That's perfect. I love that. That's such a great goal. How many of you guys have monthly, quarterly, weekly meetings with your employees? How often do you feel like your employees are actually like engaged in that conversation? Like, do you find that there's like an opportunity to improve that? So that could be a really great avenue to utilize, is what those monthly meetings look like, and using that as a communication avenue. One of the things that I've seen at several of my organizations, actually it's a leading practice that I saw with, I can't remember which department it was, I think it was our environmental services department at a hospital I worked at in Dallas. They had it's like an employee newsletter specifically for that department, so taking it down to that granular level, and the employees own the newsletter. And so they own the communication that went out in it, they own the communication to their fellow employees. And now that we're in the land of technology, that was like 4 years ago, and it was an actual like printed newsletter, and now we use social media for that. But using those like private, you can even do private groups, private Facebook groups, things like that. But using the avenues that we have available to us, I think is a really great opportunity, and that could be something that we have some collaboration on with the department, is how are we making sure that communication gets out at that department level. So I love that you mentioned that, Teresa. Appreciate it. So we are going to go ahead and open up to public input. I'm not sure if we have anyone that was going to provide some public input or not, but we've got the next 15 minutes that we'll do that, and then we will close after that. Perfect. Yeah. Perfect.
Good morning, I'm Dottie Dubuisson, 1308 North Barcelona, and 421 De Villiers Street is my studio address. I feel like I know almost everyone sitting around the table except for a few new faces, and I sometimes am asked if I'm on the city's payroll because I am probably here 50 hours a week, and I do attend meetings until 10 o'clock at night and on Saturdays and Sundays that you folks are exempted from. So I want to give a shout out to the citizen employees who are here. It occurred to me as you were all speaking of your goals that I did not hear anyone articulate the word integrity. And in the last few years, some of what we as a city had to come to terms with were accountability because of integrity flaws. So as a citizen, I would like to see that somehow integrated, because your personal goals, when they come into conflict with our communal goals, really need to be a matter of your professional integrity overriding your personal needs in the moment. And for citizens who are attacked when they have to find someone to listen to them at City Hall, it's really important that that integrity is what they receive in response. So it would encourage a lot of us if all of you would have that commitment to professional integrity being part of it. And with that in mind, I would like to suggest that we need to create some incentives for our employees who do exercise professional integrity, whether it be a citizen recognition passed on to them, whether it be a bonus. I know that there were some bonuses if City Hall recognized what you were doing, but there's some of us that know that many of you go above and beyond and never get the recognition. So an incentivization for citizen recognition might be an opportunity. I also would love it if there were any legal way that we could incentivize having our employees who choose to live in the city get a bonus for being a part of our local community, because I think that is an ongoing listening opportunity that is missed for those employees who do not choose to be a part of the city. Nothing against those of you who own homes elsewhere, but it just is a bonus to me if I can bump into you at church, at the restaurant, as I walk down the street. A couple of the other things that I heard you say was that we need to incentivize with training and all. And I think that what we also need to recognize when we do that training are what are the holes that we're missing in this city. In 8 years, we kept saying at many meetings, we need someone who is grants-oriented. We need, this grant was missed because no one could do it. In my thought process, some of the goals that this community would adopt is we want every employee who has the capacity for finding resources trained additionally to go after those resources, whether they're for their department or shared across board, because we have skills that are going underutilized between departments. So I would hope that maybe HR could kind of show where people might be able to be in support of organizations outside their own department. And I could go on, but in deference to everyone else who needs to speak, I'm going to thank you all for being a part of the city. It's such a nice feeling right now going through the community of coming together and the re-energy that this synergy is creating, that I want to thank you all for the efforts that you're putting out. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, I want to talk about football first because this is a football town, but the thing we need to have is more transparency. That's what we need to have down here at City Hall, more transparency. What I mean by transparency, we need to have a meeting every month, just like this. And then we'll give people chances to, it'll be our city. And that's what we need, more transparency. And what you said was terrific. That thing about writing a newsletter, that's be great too. But I thought the mayor would be here, but I must have come to the wrong meeting. But it doesn't make any difference. You know what the input I'm giving you? My name is Vince Sullivan. I've taught at Pensacola Junior College when I was a junior college for 40 years. So I probably taught some of y'all, or some of you, I know the colleagues of some of y'all people. Okay, so I just thought I'd come down here. And this is the first meeting I've gone to first time I've been in this building since I was here. Well, I better quit talking. But Alabama's going to lose the game. You know that, don't you? Because Clemson, Notre Dame shouldn't even be in the top 4. So, actually, if they had one more, Oklahoma would have won that game if they had one more quarter. So, Alabama's going to lose by, I say, 2 touchdowns.
Thank you for that input. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. My name is Valerie Cruz. I'm a healthcare aide worker, CNA, and I first like to begin to thank the fire department and the police department for the excellent job you do in our community, and I strongly support you both, and also everyone that works in our city and work for the city and our community. My biggest concern for our city is the beautification and the safety factor. I drive around my clients and I see the potholes, and just like a good example, yesterday I had a client, when I was driving, I got up to the pothole, then noticed a pothole, and I had to turn, and that's not a good thing for me being in a car with a client. I also like to put out a suggestion in reference to safety. I know that the city needs money, and we don't have money sometimes. We don't have the revenue to do certain things. When it comes to the safety factor, I thought maybe possibility, I can put this out on the table, I don't know, for the standards, the law, and the statutes for it, that we can possibly do a fundraiser for safety, that the community can donate money for our roads. You know, I'm not sure about all the standards to try to get the safety factor issue in line, because, you know, we just did a segment a while back on the news in reference to the safety. Many pedestrians are getting hit. This is a big issue because we love our community. Everyone loves our community. We love each other, and we want everyone to be safe. And so that's a big main concern for me, and I like the way what he was just saying. The gentleman, I don't know, can't remember his name, that our community is growing. Pensacola is going into a direction that I have prayed for many years, and I love that. And I want it to be the best city in the United States, not one of, and that's what my goal is for the city. And I thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Morning. My name is John Johnson. I'm the Executive Director with Opening Doors Northwest Florida, formerly the Escrows Coalition on the Homeless. My wheelhouse is really addressing homelessness in our community. As a representative and an advocate of homelessness, my role is really twofold. One is to advocate, and the other is to combat. And so sometimes I find myself in a place where I must strike a perfect balance. I really want to just commend the police department, because I believe we probably have one of the most friendliest police departments in the state of Florida when it comes to addressing homelessness. There's not been a quick rush to arrest anyone. In fact, I've been called to come and address homelessness in the community, especially where we found women with children that have been homeless, to figure out a way to move them out of that homeless situation and into housing. I will tell you that homelessness is incredibly complicated because we have such a homeless presence in our community because, you know, Pensacola is an attractive city. We have parks and things in the downtown area that is conducive with panhandling. And panhandling is not a curse word. So I just want to say that panhandling in and of itself does not help to end homelessness. It actually helps to continue in that business enterprise. And I am not an advocate for panhandling. I am an advocate for, however, housing people. And so my mission and goal is to do that, is to make sure that those who are homeless, who want to end their homelessness, that there's a conduit by which we're able to do that. And a lot of times, and I just want to manage expectations, just because someone wants to end their homelessness, we may not always have the affordable housing. We may not always have the right job to help that person through an employment strategy. given the fair market rents and the cost of housing itself, it sometimes presents a barrier for people to end their homelessness. And I just wanted to just convey my thanks not only to the police department. I work well with Marcy Whitaker, the director of the HUD. She's on my board, by the way. And we have a great relationship. This is a serious issue. And if we want to promote economic development in our community, we must have a strategy that addresses homelessness, and that must be part of the plan. I am a willing partner. I don't believe in enablement. I believe in engagement. So we've deployed outreach strategies to address homelessness in the community, and we have housed 41 chronically homeless men and women just from this community alone. And that is taking someone straight from the streets and housing them. And that is not easy because they have mental illness, they have addictions that have to be addressed. And so our strategy is a Housing First initiative, which is a nationally recognized strategy to end homelessness, and it's very effective. I am encouraged by the conversations that I've seen between the mayor and Commissioner May about developing a plan to end homelessness. And so I just wanted to convey my willingness to partner in that process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Anyone else? All right. We've got 4 minutes until 10, getting you out a little early. I will stay around for a little bit, so if anyone wants to connect one-on-one, feel free. But with that, thank you guys so much for your engagement. Thank you, all of you, for your public input. And I'm not going to use this gavel, but, but you guys are good to go. Thank y'all.